This is a review that's been requested by Ozvideo in the Academy on Discord, and brief overview of the game as he says he's attempting to do what he saw in an X Factor video. I'm not familiar with the video or too much on how X Factor plays, so I'm not going to review from that point of view, but I'll be addressing some of the concerns, probably most focusing on the idea of what to do when you run out of game plan, things start crumbling around you, how to cope with that situation. This is a good solid early build. It's alright. Probably say that laser tower is a bit in the middle of nowhere to properly defend those mexes. This is a good aggressive start. And we have energy to go behind that. I like the storage. I like the pumping out units. We could maybe have a radar here that would show you where the enemy units are. The other thing we could do is that we could have Janus be put out rather than the medium tanks in order to deal with these pounders, which is something you could have scouted out with a tick or something. They were right there on the front line. It's very good to make sure you've got some sort of scouting going on so you can respond to the enemy unit production there. And the purpose of that scouting is not to raid sniper mechs or something like that. It's literally just turning all those, like, radar dots into, oh, I know what this unit is. I know that this is a beamer and it's not done yet, and so I can walk up these rocket bots and I can shoot it. That's the kind of information you want to be scouting at this point in the game. Here for this guy, it's like, oh, he's got a bunch of laser towers and then nothing behind it. So I can just run around and these grunts themselves could scout that. For you, it would be like going, he has pounders. Pounders have slightly less range than the stout, but you're probably going to get better value out of your Janus and your Whistler against that, and so skip the stout and not worry about that for a bit. The repairing here is good. I'd prefer, if you can, and if you can handle the micro of it, pop out the Janus first. They have a much higher damage per second. They're about, the ground-to-ground missile launcher on the missile truck, that's about 25 damage per second, or we have 88 damage per second on the Janus. So a single Janus would have the same damage output as probably 3.5 missile trucks, and they could have been doing that damage whittling down these pounders already. At the 10-minute. Yeah. The laser towers and the repairing are better. I'd probably have opted more for more repairing rather than anything else. That combo is extremely good, and that's off the back of the energy storage and 1000 energy production. I love it. Running through like this is great. Okay, we've had a pause in the take over here because his collapsed. See, what I would do at this point, and this is probably where I'll slow the game down and start paying attention. We have the reclaim there. We have stuff going on back here. It's hard to tell, but in advance of that combo and knowing that combo goes down, you could have been a little more proactive with this build power. This constructor back here could have been dropping additional build power rather than building this factory, especially because you're going to be wanting the power to be able to influence over there. Here is a much more solid place for a factory than up here. These units here, Once you've pushed in like this, you can definitely go back and start whittling these off. But this constructor is going to reclaim everything over here before he can push back. And this is where you're most vulnerable, and your ally Ola here is going to be extremely vulnerable to these units coming over here. So what I would do rather than engaging here is alright, but I would very quickly want to start moving this way. This also secures this wreckage field for Ulla, and then once you've moved through there, then you can move through Maximus and start blocking off the front line again. Off the back of this, you probably don't want to be doing Centurions over here. If we look at this, Centurions are gonna take only about 71 seconds to walk over that. They won't be able to walk that direct, so maybe like something like that. Still about, so that's better, but if we look at that from like how fast a pawn could get over there, that's 30 seconds. And so that's going to be much more able to close up this. The pawns won't be able to fight the commander, but they'll definitely be able to pressure the commander back. And that would generally be a good thing. But yeah. And part of the problem of fighting here again is like you're fighting against the two armies. It's alright. But again, this army, rather than fighting here, I'd have moved it over here and back up Ulla and then start pressuring Maximus so that he can't free eco like this. The other thing I would have done with that, if possible, is up here on the front, given your resources, I'd be dropping a T2 factory right now, because this is locked down. You could definitely reclaim that. You are reclaiming it, that's good. I wouldn't be pushing up here because I'd be, reclaim that and then get back. Okay, T2 factory there is good. Centurions moving over are pretty good. Make use of those incisors there to defend things a little bit more. And then the other thing you're probably going to want to do, given that this is your vision at the moment, first priority over here is establishing some sort of radar and vision. Second is just towers and throwing things down. Similarly over here, establish vision and towers. From this point in the game, you're not fighting that way, you're fighting that way. And so you just want this to be an impenetrable wall here that nothing that way can get through, so that you can fight that way. And then once you fight that way, once you have formidable vision and presence here, because like if you see like if Ulla dropped a radar here, what that would show you, that would reveal all this, and if that was revealed, you would see how vulnerable everything is over here, and that you can literally just drive in. And then backed up with pawns, fast units, rather than the slow Centurions, they could have dealt with this by now, and then sweep up and come in here. Let's get rid of some drones. You could deal with these over here, and then sweep up there. And I don't know if you'd kill the base because he can regroup, focus all build power on hounds, but you can at least pin him down there and give you guys an opportunity to come back. Partially what I'd be doing in such a volatile open situation here, I would not be starting with an advanced constructor. I would be starting with units. Given that Maximus is building hounds, you don't necessarily know that, but with proper scouting and radar, you would be able to tell that they're slower units. Jaguar are probably your best bet, and you can swap into the Jaguar and stop the hounds. And then once you've secured some control of this, then maybe a Starlight or Mausers. to start pushing through, you'd probably want to focus on pushing through Ulla's lane. Your Mauser have a range of 820, so if you've got a Mauser there, for example, they have they'll have a range out to there, and so that's pretty good coverage, because you can then move either side as necessary to go and respond to that. That's a little bit over. It's probably gonna be more there. Yeah, that's better. You can move either side. You'll have more range on the Starlight, which will lengthen that by to out like that and that on your Starlight, and that'll just give you fantastic area control over that area, and that more or less turns your 3 lanes right there into one single lane by just pushing through the middle. And that's kind of what you want to do in order to close it off. Once you've got the military presence and the force there to control this area, I wouldn't necessarily push forward too hard because you're surrounded by these hills. I'd focus on getting up, maybe securing these mexes and getting either a more central T2 factory over here, or putting up a secondary T2 factory over there or something, because factory location is extremely important in map control. I'd probably go for the more centralized factory over here, grab these constructors, once they finish that, reclaim that, head them over there, build a few of them, drop another factory, and once that starts going up, you can reclaim this one, or something like that. And then these construction turrets can just be used to establish some light T2 defenses to prevent any leaks that might come through here. That's probably how I'd approach that sort of a situation. The cost of building this is one, with the metal you're going to be investing in these T2 and the mexes, each of these metal extractors takes quite a while to pay itself off. So already you've invested 1,100, 1,720, 1,970 metal into these T2 eco structures. They will pay themselves off in somewhat amount of time, but what you're going to see more is that while you're investing in this eco, this is dying over here. And that's going to be a big concern for you. And it looks like this guy broke through on the south as well with T1. And to a certain extent, that's something that at some point you just can't worry about. You're on the top half of the map, you've got this to worry about. But say if you've gone for the sort of thing that I'd suggested, where you go for pawns rather than... you establish vision up here so you can see that this is largely undefended. You go for pawns rather than Centurion so you can get there faster. And then you drop your T2 factory and drop... let's see. And drop 10 Jaguar rather than what you've invested in the T2 mexes. What's the energy cost of that? That might have been a little bit more taxing on the energy to build the Jaguar, but you do have this energy. You do have massive energy production, so it should be alright. I'd expect you'd be able to run through these hounds with ease, and you could be... I don't know about destroying 2 of the bases, but I definitely reckon you could have destroyed one of these bases over here, and then be moving on to the second. And that would just even up the map a bit. I think, given how convincingly this has all collapsed down here, you'd be at somewhat of a disadvantage, but you'd also be at a tech level advantage compared to this guy. Not so much MDXD. And so that just would leave you in a much better position overall, and once you secure that, then you can do similarly, like establish, once you've removed the threat up there, you can establish this line and then start putting out units down there, put out that fire, and or because as a second, you don't want zero resistance to this, and because it's T1, you should be able to shut it down pretty simply. And then once you shut that down, then you can start pushing through this with artillery, because you're not going to get through this easily with Jaguars. They're heavier units. Artillery should push through that. Alright. Yeah. Yeah, imagine if rather than just these 2 pawns in the base, there were 10 Jaguars. That base would be gone. Absolutely gone. As gone as this is gone. And yeah, we see Earth is going south to defend that. He's got T2, so... and... McAuliffe. They're dealing with this. So while they're dealing with this, while they're shutting that push down, then... I mean, they can use a little bit of help there, but see how they closed that off on their own. Those pawns weren't necessary. Could be pushing straight through here with artillery. And the reason I say artillery is for this very simple reason that artillery has 85 damage per second for 320 metal. It's pretty high damage for pretty low metal cost. And excellent range, which means you don't have to engage the pounders, which are really slow. The Giannis, which aren't as slow, but relatively weak. And then you just push through, and it would at least make the game more balanced, more interesting between you. Yeah, dropping this fusion here while you're being pushed by this, you could have, for the price of the fusion, what you've invested 2,690, you could have easily 20, really? 2,690. You could easily have 8 artillery here, which would absolutely shut this down. And because even without this fusion up, okay, you are stalling a bunch. No, apparently it selected the wrong person. You have plenty of energy. Absolutely plenty of energy here. You don't need this fusion in order to build what you need to build, and so just drop the artillery. A consideration to be aware of also is you've got a ton of energy excess going on at the moment, which could be converted, but in a situation like that, that's by far not the most important thing to be paying attention to. But that is rather significant at this point, the amount of resources that would be. Here's the Jaguars, by the way. They could have gone through a lot earlier. And then not only gone through a lot earlier, but if followed up by these consoles, that would have been 2,500, that would have been 12,000 metal, which is an insane amount of metal that would have more than made up for the amount you would have lost in like not having those T2 maxes. Of course, that math is based on the fact that he had hardly any army because he'd built on a fusion on his own. So yeah. But yeah, here in this case, it's like you not only built a fusion, but you built those converters. Each of those converters is like another Mauser, at least, that you could have built that isn't able to kill this. You do have those, which is going to save you, but it would allow to push through that faster, and he's going to bring in reinforcements, and that's going to start scaling away from you. Jaguars aren't the worst unit to build at this point, honestly. Um, so that's definitely alright. But another thing to pay attention to is like none of these have been upgraded to T2, and that's going to be really safe over there since you've killed that guy. So once I wouldn't do it yet, but once you've established over here, do make sure you go and upgrade those over there. So rather than, if you're going to be building these fusions for these converters, rather than doing that, what you want to do is you want to drop resources into like 5 consoles, send this constructor over, and just start upgrading those mixers over there. Maybe send 1 forward, 1 back. Except, even better than that, is if you just had absolute mass Jaguars at the moment. Again, it's like, let's do the math here for how many extra Jaguars you could have had. 4,300 plus 1,300, that's 5,600. And how much metal for a Jaguar is 330. Could have had another 17 Jaguar. You have 17 there, so could have doubled that amount, which would have absolutely rolled these 2 guys. And given the fact that they've only got that sort of progress, that would have brought you up to par and ahead, because not only would you roll those guys, but then he'd have to deal with you, and then you're running away with the game. Of course, the other thing you want to do is you want to consider these are Mausers, don't run into them, run around them. So one of the things that would help with that is if you just put out a couple radar vehicles. This wasn't envisioned until you rolled right into it. So just bring a couple radar vehicles and just move them up with your army, keep them behind, position them somewhere like that. That would have given you vision over all this, and you would have known to avoid it go around. Another thing to note is, if this guy's attacking, that's a great time for you to build in your Mausers and fight them over there. And something else generally, it's like, apart from the fact that you don't need converters because they're turning off, you have so much metal here. Partly that could just be sent to this guy over here who's also building too many fusions, so that he doesn't have any army to take this down. But you have so much metal, and yes, and that's 3 fusions gone down, which is another ton of Jaguars that could be. Like, even now, it's like, we go 3 fusions, which is 12,900 divided by 330, that's 40 Jaguars that you could have here. Add on to that the other 11,000 metal that you have in storage. That's 72 Jaguars. Let's see how large this army is here. It's massive. That would absolutely roll over anything that they have there, and would feed itself into back more resource production, and would generate value. You kind of start to, I mean, you wouldn't have the entirety of these resources if you didn't have these fusions, except you probably would have, because you have all this reclaim over here that you still haven't reclaimed, and could have pushed into units instead. Like getting this factory, that factory, I mean, it's pretty cool, but it's gonna take a long time to like turn into something, whereas a bunch more Jaguars would be like able to fight. Generally, like, the idea is like Jaguars might not be the best unit against against these, you might want to add a few starlights that can outrange, or bulls because they're a bit more tanky and can probably take the fight against Janus a little bit more solidly, or you can focus on like bypassing all that with your Jaguars. But the kind of emphasis here is that, and we sort of know this, units have such insane value in how many enemy units they can kill really easily, whereas a fusion sits there for, I don't know, let's be generous to fusion and say that you have like 20 metal per second being generated from it. That's still going to take you 215 seconds or 3.5 minutes for you to get that value back from that fusion before you start breaking even. And that entire time is that time that your enemy is making pushes like this onto your ally base. If we look at like the eco that's funding yellow, for example, half-built fusion, which, okay, he's putting a bunch of resource into that, but he hasn't yet. And then a single geo, which costs less metal than a fusion, so it's generally worth it to build a T2 geo. Red, single fusion over here, no more fusion up there. He's got the T2 maxes, which, like for the record, you could have brought that constructor over there and been building mexes, but you don't need to because you've already got, it would be good to, I would say, at this point, but you also have like plenty of resources that you could be using to just destroy the enemy. And who else has been contributing to this push, these pushes over here? We have this guy over here who, again, no fusions, one single advanced geo. This guy's invested a bunch more into energy production. That's about more than a fusion in cost of energy production. So that's how they're funding their push. It's by literally just not building these. When you want to build eco is essentially when there's nothing else you can do. It doesn't entirely come down to that, but it's nothing else you can do that will pay itself off in less than 5 minutes, approximately. And that's going to take a little bit of education to know, but when this kind of push is coming in, which is threatening entire players and armies and stuff, you're going to get probably much better payoff by constructing some type of military response to that, whether it be aircraft. A bunch of shurikens would absolutely destroy that army. There are some fighters, so you'd need fighters as well. And your armada, so you don't have shurikens, but as an example, a bunch of shurikens would absolutely decimate that, or bombers would take out all the artillery, or just bulls and like enough bulls, because there's only a few snipers there, like 20 bulls would just roll over the army, and like that's about the cost of 20 bulls for that army. So yeah, you've got a bunch of easy options for just put out units and roll over the enemy. And that's probably what this game comes down to in the end. They built units and you didn't, and because they built units, they got value out of their, they got immense value. Because the other thing is that a unit advantage doesn't produce like a slight amount of value. It produces a massive amount of value, because they kill your units faster, and every one of your units that dies is another unit that can't give you value. And so not only do they get more value over time, they destroy your ability to generate value. So you go into a battle, a bunch of your units die really quickly, and then you end up doing no damage. But if you had a bunch more units, it's like, while they're killing like the units that they kill, all the additional units are just firing without being fired at. And that snowballs really quickly. Here's a good example of it. Just very quickly losing Well, I'm not sure. It looked like a bunch of those hounds died to their own snipers, to be honest. But if we look at it there, it's like that got off one shot before it died. These fire a couple shots, and then are just absolutely melted by these almost dead hounds. It's like they just had enough of them that you didn't even have the time to kill the almost dead hounds, because he just killed you so fast because he had so many more units than you. And that's mostly what this game comes down to. They built units, you guys built eco, and eco doesn't win games. Well, not directly. And they just went the more direct route, and because it was more direct route, they got there faster. A lot faster. Because even now we're building advanced fusions while the army rolls in and kills stuff. And note that also, like, the 8,000 metal built in a factory is also a bunch of resources that just doesn't come out in, that just isn't units that you can build. I mean, it's only like 5,000 more than a T2 factory, but that's still 5,000. That's still like 4 Starlight or something like that. So that's approximately what happened that game. Alrighty. I hope that answers your questions on what went down that game. And I hope that gives you the tools to win a lot more games in the future. Yeah, good luck and have fun.